guy's gonna be some senator one day.
So we have a long, long way to go until the 2024 election. But, I like to look at the future a little bit. I like to, a long, long way, a few months. But I like to look a little bit farther than just a few months. I like to look a few years ahead in the future and see what we have going on. And so that's why I created the 2028 Way Too Early Power Rankings of potential presidential candidates in the 2028 election for the Republican primary. Now, let me explain what a power rating is. A power rating is not who I want to see run, it's not who I want to see win. A power rating is who I think, on a neutral playing field, if they announced today, would have the most momentum going into the election. And that's why at the top of my list, I have Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, a few minutes ago, I said I don't think that Vivek is cut out to be VP. I don't think that he's going to be VP. Despite that, I do think that he would have, if he announced today, the most momentum going into this next election. He was essentially went from zero to hero in a matter of months. Nobody knew his name before the election. Everybody knows his name now. He has the most name recognition out of anybody. He probably has the most resources that we just don't know about out of anybody. And he has a lot of support among the average person, among the average voter in the Republican Party. He's somebody that's young, charismatic, and he's widely been touted as a potential successor to Trump, should Trump win this election. It could be that he could be the front runner get in a few years when that primary starts off. He could even get the Trump endorsement early on. Who knows? I'm not sure. But I have Vivek at number one. I think he does have the most momentum going into this. A close second is Governor Ron DeSantis. I think DeSantis still has a ton of momentum that he can build off of to go into the 2028 election. And the reason I say that is because of a lot of his voters, while they have moved on to Trump, are still kind of pointing out and saying, we should have nominated DeSantis. DeSantis was still the best guy. I'm going to vote for Trump, but I still think DeSantis was the best guy. Personally, I think it was probably going to be Trump all along, but I can see their argument. I think DeSantis suffered from a lot of blunders that this experience will be able to help him understand. And if he chooses to run again, he knows what he did wrong, and he'll be able to move forward off of that. Do I think DeSantis is going to run in 2028? I don't know. But if he did, I do think that he would have a ton of momentum going into that election that he would be able to positively build off of, and he could end up winning. Number 3, Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia. Governor Youngkin is another person who, I didn't mention it earlier, but has been widely speculated as a potential vice president for Trump. He's wildly popular, especially in his state. Some drawbacks that he does have is that he hasn't really been able to accomplish much just because he's had a divided Congress. Now the House of Delegates and Senate in Virginia are both controlled by Democrats, so Youngkin doesn't have much that he can work with. Also, his term ends in 2025. He will have to wait a full 3 years before he's able to run for the next election. That's a very long time in American political cycle. Very long time. The only advantage he could have is if he's put in the Trump administration in some capacity, whether it be in a cabinet position or even in the vice presidency. That, or when he's done with his governorship, he could run for Senate. And even if he doesn't win, it's enough to keep him in the news. The next Senate election is in 2026. Perfectly timed. Perfectly timed for Youngkin to be able to finish out his term and then start an election cycle again. Will Youngkin run? I don't know. But that's not the point of the power rating, is it? At number 4, we have Senator J.D. Vance from Ohio. Senator Vance has quickly become one of the rising stars in the Republican Party. He's very popular among the Trump base. He's very popular among traditional conservatives. He's very popular among a lot of people. Vance knows media very well. He's been in the media for a long time, and he knows how to work it. He has money, he has resources, he has donors. He's one of the best senators that we have in the Senate. In fact, he's widely regarded as the best or one of the best Republican senators among most people that you'd go out and ask today. Vance has already been speculated to be running in 28. It could happen. It very well could happen. And if he does, I do think that he would have a lot of momentum going into that race because of his popularity. Very similarly, at number 5, Tim Scott could also have a ton of momentum going into the 2028 race if he chooses to run again. Now, Tim Scott could move up in the power rankings if President Trump chooses him as vice president. Because a lot of people believe that Trump is going to choose somebody that he's going to be able to play kingmaker with and set up to be a successor in 2028. Now, Scott might not fit that bill. He's in his 60s. He's a little bit older. Trump is apparently looking for someone a little bit younger. Scott might not end up being a good VP pick if those are Trump's criteria. But if he does become VP, he has a lot of momentum going forward. And even if he doesn't become vice president, he still could have some momentum and be able to work off of it and be able to go into the 2020 election if he so chooses and run. At number 6, I have Tucker Carlson. A lot of people have speculated that Tucker Carlson might run. I have him at number 6 because he is wildly popular. He would have a lot of momentum going in. But the thing is, I don't think that he has quite as much appeal to voters as a presidential candidate as he does general people as a television host. Personally, I don't think Tucker's going to run for president. I don't think he's ever going to run for any public office. I think that he is very effective where he is. He's a communicator who is pushing a message and pushing an agenda to mass amounts of people who don't keep up with a lot of this stuff. Whether you like Tucker Carlson or not, he's one of the most effective communicators there is on the right. He has a large audience, he has a large following, and if he did choose to run for president, he would have a lot of momentum going into the race. Like I said, personally, I don't think he should. I don't think he would. I think he's perfectly content with what he's doing right now. If I were him, I wouldn't give it up. That's just me personally. If I were a television host with a mass following who was very popular, getting paid to do what he was doing, even if my show is on Twitter, which it is, but even if my show's only on Twitter and it's not on Fox News anymore, I still have millions of people listening to what I say and watching my content. Why would I give that up? If I'm Tucker Carlson, I'm not giving that up to run for president. I don't think he will. But if he did, he would have a lot of momentum going in, and that's why he's number 6 on the power ranking. Number 7, we have Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri. Similar to J.D. Vance, Josh Hawley is typically named among some of the best senators in the United States Senate. I personally think he is the best senator in the United States Senate. He's my favorite senator. He would be my personal favorite in a 2028 election primary if he decided to run. The thing is, I don't think Hawley has nearly as much of the name recognition as Vance, despite having served longer. Hawley still has a relatively smaller name. He's a very good senator, very effective. He does have a good following, but not as good as some of the other people on this list. I think a lot of people would see his name and say, who's Josh Hawley? I hope that they would look him up. I hope that they would see that he is very, very effective at what he does. But I don't think that he quite has the name recognition and reach as some of the other people on this list should he decide to run. But he still does have enough that he would have a good bit of momentum going into this race, and that's why I have him at number 7. At number 8, we have Senator Ted Cruz, someone who we've seen run for president before in 2016. We've seen him kind of go through a political transformation, and we've seen him be very vocal about the issues of our day. whether it be critical race theory, what's going on down at the border, or abortion. Cruz would be a good pick to run for president. However, I do think that he has some baggage following him. A lot of people still remember a few years ago when Texas was hit by the massive snowstorm, Ted Cruz picking up his bags and running to Mexico. He got called on it and he decided to come back to the state, but still left a very bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. A lot of people like Ted Cruz, but not a lot of people trust Ted Cruz. He does have somewhat of a snake oil salesman uh, essence to him. Very funny, very fitting since he's from Texas. Cruz has been a good senator, but a lot of people are still not trustworthy of him. That's why I have him at number 8. I think he would have a good bit of momentum going in, but a lot of people would have reservations and questions and want to watch and wait and see what he does. Coming in at number 9, we have Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota, excuse me. Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota. Someone who has had a fair bit of name recognition pop up recently. She could potentially be in the running for Trump's vice president. However, supposedly Trump has announced that he's not going to pick a woman, so that could hurt her chances. If Trump did pick her at vice president, it might boost her in the rankings a little bit, but I'm not sure that she would go much higher than number 6. That being said, I do think that she is in a very good position. There are some questions as to how conservative she actually is. She originally vetoed a transgender bathroom bill that was put forward in her state. She vetoed it. She reversed course a few years later, but she did initially veto it. This was at a time when the issue was seen as a losing issue for Republicans before Glenn Youngkin came along and Loudoun County became a national story. But she did turn around and do the right thing. But because of that veto, I think a lot of people are very untrusting of her. That, and also there was the huge scandal about her having a potential affair with Corey Lewandowski that dropped over the summer. If you don't know who Corey Lewandowski is, look up the Womp Womp video. Womp Womp. Anyway, a lot of people might not see Noem as a good pick. We'll see what happens. But rounding out the list at number 10, we have Ambassador Nikki Haley, who is currently running for president. Personally, I hope Nikki Haley never runs for president ever again in her lifetime. We do not need that woman within 100 miles of the White House. And Donald Trump, if you're watching, I doubt you are, but if you are, whatever you do, please do not put Nikki Haley in any position in your administration at all. But I do think that if Nikki Haley decided to run for president again in 2028, she would have a lot of momentum. A lot of the Never Trump faction of the party would instantly back her, and a lot of people who might be disenfranchised with Trump and how he's run the Republican Party for the last few years would also back her. There would be a lot of people seem to believe that especially if Trump wins in 2028, that the more populist MAGA root and wing of the party is going to take deeper root and is going to become further entrenched, and it's going to be harder to get them out. They're right, that is true, but I do think that 2028 is going to still be a battle between, is the Trump-esque version of the party going to continue to prevail, or are there going to be people that are going to try to revert us back to something pre-2016? I do think that there's going to be a battle there. And I do think that Nikki Haley is probably going to be a major figurehead in that battle, whether she runs for president or not. If she decides to run for president in 2028, she's going to have a lot of momentum backing her. I hope that she doesn't, but we will see. The rest of the names on this list are people who I think are either unlikely to run or unlikely to get a lot of support in the nomination. I'll be posting this list later to Twitter and to Instagram if you want to view the full list. But I do not think that there are many people worth mentioning on this list, except for I do have Kari Lake on there somewhere. I am personally not a huge fan of Kari Lake. I do hope that she wins her Senate race, but I am not the biggest fan of her. And I don't think that 2 years in the Senate is quite enough to be ready to run for president. Similarly, Governor or 4 years, my bad, still 4 years. That's not even a full term. Similarly, Mark Robinson, who's running for governor in North Carolina, there's been some buzz around him potentially running for president. I would love to see it happen one day, but I think only one term as governor would not be enough to run for president in a state that allows you to run consecutive back to back terms like North Carolina. I think that he should stay in North Carolina, run for governor again, and then 4 years later, 2032, if he wants to give it a shot, go for it. Some other names on the list: Tommy Tuberville, he made some noise this summer. I don't think that he would run, but I've seen some speculation. Katie Britt from Alabama. I think that she's a fine senator, but I don't think that she's quite presidential material yet. And, there's some other people in there that could end up running, maybe not, who might have a good bit of momentum, might not. One of those could be Marco Rubio, who ran in 2016. We've seen him kind of go through a political shift and evolution the last few years. He could be somebody to unite the Christian right and the MAGA movement of the party into one coherent force and move forward. I don't know if it'll happen, but potentially could. Who knows? We'll see. Only time will tell.